Hello everyone and welcome back for some more Drag Race gossip, secrets and drama. So I'm back for another Roscoe's recap, and this viewing party was for All Stars 10 episode 7, and the guests this week were Acid Betty and Dire Betty. So today we're going to be talking about why Acid Betty got mad at production during the All Stars 10 press week. The Queens reveal that something happened this week which some may see as production interference, and an unaired conversation about Acid Betty's true feelings about Trixie Mattel which got cut from this week's episode. All that and more coming up in today's video, so let's get started. So they started off and Naysha said there's quite a big difference for Acid and Dire between their original seasons and then going on All Stars. For Dire it was about 2 or 3 years between the two, whereas for Acid it's been almost 10 years. And Acid joked that when she was on Drag Race, Dire wasn't even born yet. So Naysha asked, were they quick to say yes to All Stars or did they have to think about it? Dire said she has the opinion that you should take every opportunity you're given and, quote, grab everything by the balls, but also it felt like the right time for her to go back. Acid said she would have said no, but she had been going through old photos of herself and she was getting all, quote, retrospective and she wanted to go back on tour again, and then they called her and asked her if she wanted to do All Stars. Dire then looked at Acid and said, quote, so you're emotional, and Acid joked that Dire was trying to set you up for what's coming, and Acid said, quote, hold on to your effing hat. Acid also confirmed that she was asked for almost every other All-Stars season previously, but had said no. The reason was because she wanted to go back the way she did this time, which was confident in herself, not giving a damn, loving her drag no matter what people said, and she doesn't think that she was ready for All-Stars until now. Carmel then asked if Dire or Acid would have liked to have been in any of the other two brackets instead. Acid said she would only do it now if Dire was in the bracket, and they clarified later that the two of them have become very close. Dire then joked that she would do a bracket without Acid, and everyone laughed. Also, Dire and Acid were wearing matching outfits at Roscoe's, and at one point they later clarified that Acid made these outfits for them and Dire made the hair. They then looked at the Queen's entrance looks for this bracket, and they specifically talked about Cynthia Lee Fontaine's look. Dire said that Cynthia's wig was, quote, progressively sliding the entirety of us filming. Acid asked if they were allowed to talk about this, but then she did start talking about it. Naysha asked if Cynthia's look was supposed to be deconstructed, but Acid said, quote, no, but it started deconstructing and they stopped. Dire looked at Acid and they both laughed, and Acid said, quote, I'll be the B word. Dire then said that it was hot in the studio that day, and Acid continued saying that Cynthia's outfit was falling apart, so they stopped filming and they had people come and fix her and help her fix her hair and things like that. That's when Acid said she realised that All Stars was going to be a different experience than the last time she was on Drag Race because, quote, usually they want you to fall apart, but this time they were fixing her outfit and she thought, quote, oh, this is gonna be maybe fun. When they were talking about Dire's entrance look, they asked if she broke a bottle twice, because as we know they filmed the runway 2 times. Acid said yes, but Dire said actually no, she only did it once. She did have a spare bottle, but she left it in the workroom, so she only did it once. They did ask her if she wanted to go and get the other one, but she said no. Dire also said the bottle was made of sugar, which is common for things like fake glass props. However, Dire revealed that when she smashed it on the main stage, RuPaul screamed, quote, is that real glass? Then Acid said, quote, because she has to pay the insurance, and Dire said, quote, I know, the liability of it all. They moved on to the part of the episode where the queens had to decide the pairs they would work in for the design challenge, and most people wanted to work with either Acid or Dire. Naysha said she loved that Alyssa wanted to work with Dire, but Dire said she wanted to work with either Acid or Ginger and didn't name Alyssa. Daya said it was crazy the amount of times Alyssa called her the quote B word, which was a reference to when Alyssa said that to Daya during the season 14 reunion. And it sounds like Daya was saying Alyssa said it more times than what was shown in the episode. Daya then said, quote, find something new to say. Batty Davis said that Daya was still the villain, and Daya said no, she was never the villain, although I think she meant that as a joke. Batty then asked Daya why she hates Alyssa. Daya said she does not hate Alyssa at all, and she's her season 14 sister, but it almost sounded slightly sarcastic, and Naysha said that Daya's tone had sounded different. Daya then joked and said that she loved Alyssa's entrance look, which she had previously said at Roscoe's that she didn't like, and Daya said she loved that it said, quote, nut on the back of it. But she added that she really does love Alyssa, but then she said you'll have to watch the rest of the season to find out. They moved on, and there was a VIP question for Acid, which was, does she still think Trixie Mattel is ugly? And Acid immediately jokingly said yes, and everyone laughed. Just to explain in case you don't know, you may remember that back on season 8, during Untucked, they played a video message of Trixie talking about kimchi because the two of them have been good friends for a long time. And during the video message, Acid said that Trixie's makeup was bad.
You got me my first jobs because you're just such a good person.
She is ugly. That nose contour is atrocious. Will you fix her makeup when you go home?
No, her makeup was perfect.
Really? I just don't get the makeup.
I know, but it's not for you to get. It's what she does.
Then, at the season 8 finale, Trixie came up to the mic and asked Acid if she came for her in Untucked and said that she would take her answer in the parking lot.
The question is, in Untucked, did you or did you not come for me? I will take my answer after the show in the parking lot.
If I was coming for you, I would burn your wigs, and you'd be fully aware, darling. You know that. And you still haven't fixed that nose contour.
And so after all of this, people felt like Acid and Trixie had beef. But back to Roscoe's, and they asked Acid about it, and Acid said, quote, I never thought she was ugly, roll the tapes. Naysha said Acid said she thought the makeup was ugly, but Acid said, quote, no, I was confused, they told me, they informed me, now I'm not confused, and she fixed it, so good for her. Acid said, real tea though, this Trixie thing was the subject matter in this week's episode of All Stars 10, but it got cut from the episode. Daya said they cut it probably because Trixie wasn't in the room, but Acid said that Trixie wasn't in the room when she originally said it on season 8. Then Acid said, quote, they bring her into the room, they love her. But Acid said that she was shocked that they didn't include the footage of them talking about the Trixie stuff in this week's episode. Acid said she actually loves Trixie and she thinks that she's iconic and she goes on tour and DJs and things like that. And the real tea is, none of the queens go on Drag Race to become like RuPaul. They go on the show to become Trixie Mattel and have the career that she does. They then moved on to the moment when Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo came into the workroom. Daya said she's never felt more like a, quote, huge man, because they're so both petite and tiny, and she added that they were both very sweet and smelled amazing. Acid said they're also so quiet, and they actually made them come into the workroom twice because they were so quiet. The conversation between the queens and Ariana and Cynthia also went on a lot longer than what was shown, and Acid said she was touching her shoes and playing with the nails, and it was a key. Also, the part when Ariana and Cynthia went behind the mirror backstage was actually Acid's idea. Acid explained that the two of them had said they were such fans of the show, and Acid told them that there was a camera behind the mirror because they were asking questions about it, and they didn't know about the camera behind the mirror. So Acid said, quote, you're Ariana Grande, you can go back there. Ariana asked, really, could she do that? And Acid said, quote, make them take you back there, girl. That's why the two of them were then standing in front of Acid when they did go behind the mirror, and she laughed because, quote, the B words did it. Naysha said that speaking of the mirror, that's why some queens don't get ready in front of the mirror, because it's not actually a very good mirror. Acid said that it's wavy and it's not a real mirror, and Naysha said that it's kind of faint. Daya then joked and said, quote, blame it on the mirror, and Naysha said that she was being shady. Acid then jokingly looked at Daya and said, quote, no, I love your makeup, it's not the mirror, and everyone laughed. They then watched this week's Maxi Challenge, which was a design challenge in pairs, where the queens had to create good and Wicked Witch looks. Cara said she liked the challenge, but she thought that they would lip sync more during the storytelling part. Daya said, quote, why did we not? We should have. It was so uncomfortable. Daya added that one thing that got, quote, lost in translation was that they really emphasised to the queens having the storytelling aspect of it, but watching it on TV, it doesn't feel like that, and she was really concerned about the story part, and Acid agreed. Acid said it's weird that they, presumably referring to production, put emphasis on certain parts of the challenge during filming, but when you see it in the edit, they just kind of, quote, threw it away. Daya explained that they told the queens they had to make sure that it told the story of how the two characters know each other and what the interaction between them is. Acid agreed and said they were, quote, so neurotic about it. Daya repeated that she feels like that part didn't translate properly, and that was the part that she was most concerned about going into the challenge. She also knew that she's not that funny, which is why she needed someone like Ginger to write the script to make it funny. So it sort of sounds like maybe production emphasised certain parts of the challenge when they spoke to the queens and explained the challenge, but then the editing didn't quite line up with that. And we've heard things like this before. For example, during season 17, Sam Starr said that when they did the monologues challenge, production showed them clips from the All Stars 6 monologues, but they were all really serious and heartfelt, so that's why Sam and Lana went down the more serious route, but then the judges told them they were being too serious. So it's open to interpretation as to whether production was setting up the queens for failure, or whether it's just something that got lost in translation when it comes time to editing the show. But some people in the past have said that this is a form of production interference. Going back to Roscoe's, and Acid revealed that for the storytelling part, they gave the queens a template for the script, and she saw that Ginger literally replaced 2 words from every sentence of the script, and that's how she wrote their script, which Acid said she should have done. Apparently, the script said something like, quote, I'm whatever witch, I'm bad, I like sucking D, and Ginger just replaced the sucking D part. Acid said she should have just done that, and she asked if Daya knew that that's how Ginger wrote the script, and Daya said no, because she didn't have anything to do with their script because Ginger wrote it entirely herself. Naysha said she thought Ginger and Daya had the best story part, but Acid and Denali had the most cohesive outfits. Daya said she really thought that Acid and Denali were going to win for sure. Naysha then sort of laughed and said, let's talk about the third group, which was Cynthia and Alyssa, and she asked what people thought about it. Batty said that there was a lot going on and it was, quote, erratic. Daya said, quote, honestly, for glue guns, that was sickening in my opinion, and Acid agreed. Naysha said her only issue with their group, which was also the best part of their group, which was that they incorporated some Spanish into their story, but Naysha said, quote, give me, instead of 6 words, give me 3. Because the problem is understanding when there are people who don't speak Spanish. Daya said that might just be the viewer's problem, but Naysha said you're going to be judged, which means it becomes a judge's problem, which then becomes your problem. Daya then said, you know that this is something really important to those queens, so why would you invite them to come anyway? But Naysha said she's not saying don't speak Spanish, it's just instead of 6 words, just use 3. Because the problem was with the jokes, because there were so many words you might not catch them all. Naysha caught all of them because she's a Spanish speaker, but not everyone is, and Daya said she understands what Naysha is saying. Acid then said, quote, this is coming from someone who maybe knows RuPaul a little more, right Naysha? Then Acid laughed and said she was being shady. Acid then said, quote, because honey, RuPaul in Spanish, oil and water. And she said the minute Spanish walks in the room, RuPaul is confused. Then Acid said, quote, hold on till next week, we'll see how the edit goes. And some people gasped a bit, but then Acid said, quote, I know they'll make her look amazing. But going back to Cynthia and Alyssa, Acid said she also found their presentation to be a little, quote, chaotic, and apparently they admitted to Acid that they were not clear on their story either, but they were hoping that, quote, everything they threw to the wall stuck. Daya said what they also didn't show is that everyone was, quote, freaking out while making their outfits, and the workroom was a total mess. Daya then said, presumably about Ginger, quote, how are you going to do Drag Race 3 times, 4 times, and not bring an effing pattern? Acid said that Ginger was, quote, crying because she couldn't sew, and Daya literally sewed everything that Ginger was wearing. Daya then said she didn't sew everything, she just, quote, gave her the tools. But Acid said that all Ginger did was cut out a pattern, and Daya did the rest. And Daya said it's fine, honestly, because Ginger wrote the entire story and Daya did all of the sewing, so it worked out. Acid added that she feels like they, quote, totally deleted Daya's struggle because she didn't sleep, she had to effectively make 2 garments, and she worked the hardest out of everyone, and people clapped and cheered for Daya. Daya said she appreciates that, but in her opinion it was a trade-off because she made the outfits and Ginger wrote all of the story herself because Daya didn't have anything to do with the story. Acid then pointed to Denali, who was sitting in the audience at Roscoe's but was not on camera, and Acid said, quote, right Denali, you do a little bit, I'll do a little bit, although this was clearly a joke. They then watched the judges' critiques, and Naysha said one of the worst critiques that can come out of a judge's mouth is when they say, quote, it's so costumey. Naysha then said, quote, what the F is it supposed to be? It's just so stupid when they say that. Acid then joked and presumably did an impression of Michelle and said, quote, that looks like a wig, it looks like a wig, and everyone laughed. Naysha then said, quote, B-word, what do you think, hello? Acid then said, quote, are you wearing makeup? Oh my god. Naysha said it's very that, and she hates when she says that, presumably referring to Michelle, and she lives for when the other judges disagree with Michelle because she gets annoyed. Acid then said, quote, well, hold on to your effing hat because it continues. Yeah, it's a key. And Naysha said she gets excited when that sort of thing happens. They all said that they didn't really agree with the judges' critiques overall this week, and the audience agreed. And it seemed that they mostly disagreed with the negative things that they said about Daya and Acid. Daya said she told Denali and Acid on set that she thought that they slayed it and that they were going to win. Naysha said she thinks maybe they do things like this on purpose because they're trying to get a reaction out of the queen and they want them to crack, especially, for example, if you're a design queen like Acid and then they try and tell you that you did badly on a design challenge. Acid said that, quote, Law Roach tried to rip me a new one, and I was like, smile B-word, and every time that Law said that's awful, Acid just smiled and laughed. Daya then asked what was holding up Acid's skirt, because in the episode, Law's critique to Acid was that it looked like she had just safety pinned the fabric in place. But Acid said no, it was all sewn together. Acid then said, quote, he's not a seamstress, he's a stylist, which means that he goes in and looks at garments already made and he judges them, so he doesn't know how bleep is made. Period. And people clapped and cheered. They then got to the moment in the episode when Daya and Ginger won the challenge. Naysha asked Daya how she felt about winning the challenge and then lip syncing. Daya explained that if she's being honest, she really did not expect for her and Ginger to be in the top, which is why she did not, quote, throw a B-word fit when she lost the lip sync, because she was just happy to be in the top. Daya did say, though, that they didn't really show much of her in the lip sync, and Naysha said she's going to ask a very, quote, problematic question. She then said that when they do that sort of thing, as in when they show one person more during the lip sync than the other, it's usually because they need something to, quote, fit a certain narrative. Naysha then said that, quote, a little birdie told her that someone in this bracket felt like one of the queens was favoured a lot of the time, and she asked Daya and Acid whether that was true and who it was, and presumably this was referring to Ginger. Daya said honestly she was just focused on herself, so she wasn't concerned with anyone else. They asked Acid what she thought, and Acid sarcastically said she agreed with what Daya said, but the others didn't believe her. Acid then said she finds that the audience watching is usually smart and they can figure this sort of thing out for themselves. Acid then said that you can tell her who you think was favoured. Some people in the audience shouted out Ginger. Naysha also made a joke and said she couldn't possibly say who it was, and then she asked them all if they liked this new ginger-coloured hair she was wearing, and people laughed. They moved on to the Q&A, and one of the questions was congratulating Acid on her boycott of Starbucks, and which other companies should we boycott? Just to explain for those who may not know what this is in reference to, the boycott part, I presume, is referring to the companies that are on the boycott list, or maybe just companies in general that have been accused of bad practices such as union busting, and also companies who have got rid of DEI efforts, or companies who are seen as not standing up for LGBT+ rights. And in relation to this, a few weeks ago, Irene the Alien appeared on Mistress Isabel Brooks' YouTube channel. At one point, they were talking about Acid Betty, and Mistress got Irene to tell a story about during press week for All Stars 10, they got the Queen's coffee, but it was from Starbucks, and apparently Acid went crazy at them for it.
Girl. We were doing a press event this week, and the press team ordered us coffee, and they ordered it from Starbucks, and Acid lost her fucking mind because she's very much like, she abides by the boycott. Like, she's not wrong. Nothing that came out of her mouth was wrong, but she almost like walked off.
This clip then got a lot of traction online, which is presumably why someone brought this up in their question for Acid at Roscoe's. But going back to Roscoe's, Acid said to just go online and see who we're boycotting, and it's a never-ending list, and some examples are Pepsi, Coca-Cola, Starbucks, the Walmart Group, General Electric, and Ford. Acid then said, quote, all those mother effers, anyone who is giving money to oppress us or to oppress people, or anyone who is union busting, which for me is the working class, I'm against. And everyone clapped and cheered. Daya also said, quote, anyone who is rolling back DEI efforts. Naysha also said, Target is another one of these examples. But going back to Starbucks, Acid said the real tea why this was so dramatic is not just because she's a boycotter, it's because she had told them already what her stance was on Starbucks because they had already mentioned it to them, and then when they were doing PR, they showed up with Starbucks. Acid said that they had assured her that they were cool with her stance and knew not to bring Starbucks, but then the Starbucks showed up one day, so Acid, quote, lost my bleep. And she had warned them that, quote, if I see that logo anywhere around me, I'm going to dump it and go crazy. Daya also said that they were in New York at the time and there are so many local coffee places, so why did they go to Starbucks in the first place? They moved on, and Naysha brought up what she was saying earlier about certain contestants being favoured, but she said it's not that Queen's choice if they get favoured, so don't send them any hate. And Naysha also said, in terms of Ginger Minj, who is competing for the 4th time, Ginger made a statement previously where she said, if you have a dream and you're given an opportunity to fulfill your dream again, why would you say no? And it's the same in the pageant world, and if it takes you 6 or 7 times to get a crown, you'll do it. So don't blame people like Ginger, and people clapped and cheered. Then there was an audience question which was whether the contestants knew the format of All Stars 10 before they agreed to sign up. Acid and Daya seemed hesitant to answer, so Naysha said she would answer because she doesn't want them to get into trouble. But Naysha said yes, they told the queens in advance before they signed up what the format would be, and some queens did not understand the bracket and point system, which is why some people said no. And a few weeks ago, for example, at Roscoe's, Naysha had shared that Jessica Wilde was asked for the season, but she said no for that reason. Daya said she also didn't really care what the format was because it changes every year anyway, so it wouldn't have mattered. And finally, someone asked Daya if she got mad that when Ginger was getting compliments on the main stage about her outfit, she didn't tell the judges that Daya had actually made her outfit. Daya said, to be 100% honest, she did not expect them to be in the top in the first place, and she was just happy that she was in the top and got points, and she didn't have to rely on getting NVQ points from the other queens. But then she said, quote, in retrospect, am I a little annoyed? I think so, absolutely, but also that's not just Ginger's fault, and there were lots of other factors that determine that sort of thing. Naysha also said the judges know what's going on anyway, and for example, if you say something in the workroom on the mic about, for example, the lining of your outfit not being right, the judges will then say that later on the main stage, so they are obviously told. Acid said it's true, and there were moments when she was trying to help out other queens when they were freaking out, but they would just, quote, make bulging eyeballs at her, like, don't mention it, don't talk about it, presumably because they didn't want them to catch it on camera and for that to become part of that queen's storyline. Apparently Ginger did that, and so did several other queens, so Acid just quietly helped them but didn't say anything about it. So there you go, there was the Roscoe's recap for All Stars 10 episode 7. What did you think of the first episode of bracket 3? And which bracket has been your favourite so far? Let me know in the comments. I'd also like to give a special shout out to my amazing Patreon members who upgraded or joined recently. So we have Jessica and Linda who upgraded to the new tier Drag Tea All Star. Then we have Cool Gal Nan, Elizabeth Ann and Ryan who upgraded to the new top tier Queen of Queens. And also we have Patty who recently joined in the Queen of Queens tier. Jessica, Linda, Cool Gal Nan, Elizabeth Ann, Ryan and Patty, you are all absolute legends. If you'd like to get early access to my videos, exclusive content as well as new benefits such as a personalised cameo style video message from me or an exclusive piece of my merch, please consider supporting me on Patreon. It just costs a few dollars a month and it really does make a huge difference to my channel, so please check it out and I'll put a link to my Patreon in the description. I'd also like to say a humongous thank you to all of my new and existing Patreon members. Honestly, your support really does mean everything to me and I'm so humbled and appreciative of all of your continued support. So thank you so much for everything. It really does mean more than you know. If you could please do me a favour and make sure you like and comment on this video because it really does help boost the video in the algorithm and promote it to more people. And make sure you hit that subscribe button. I'd love to get to 150,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and subscribing is a free way to support the channel, so please make sure you subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you'll join me again in the future for some more Drag Race gossip, secrets, and drama. Thank you so much. Bye!